Hey guys, it's Sierra the Solitary Witch, and today I'm making this video to go over the 12th house with you guys. So super excited about this video. I don't want to take up too much time in the intro, so let's go ahead and jump right in. If you have any interest at all in astrology and in understanding the houses, because a lot of people tend to focus on just the planet placements, the planetary placements in their chart, but the houses are just as important, if not more important, than the planetary placements themselves. So I want to make this video for you guys explaining the mystery of the 12th house, because a lot of people, from my experience, tend to kind of glance over or gloss over the 12th house. It doesn't get talked about as much as some of the other houses that are, I guess, a little more popular. So today we're going to be discussing what the 12th house is, the planets that may be placed in your 12th house, what that means, the elements that are in your 12th house, and really sort of simplifying for you guys what this is so that you can then look at your own natal chart and dissect these things for yourself. First point that we're going to go over is, what is the 12th house? So the 12th house essentially represents the subconscious mind. It represents what is hidden within us, our blind spot, what we are not aware of, what we disassociate from. So while the conscious mind only makes up about 5 to 10% of our entire brain power, the subconscious mind makes up about 90 to 95%. So even though we work with our conscious mind every day and we operate from a space of our conscious mind, the subconscious is where all of our power is. The subconscious knows every trauma that we have ever experienced, who was involved, when it happened, what makes us sick, what ails us. The subconscious knows what is placed before us in our future, in our path. It knows everything, while the conscious mind is just the filter that everything passes through before getting to the subconscious mind. So a really good way to break this down, and a really easy way for people to sort of understand better the subconscious mind, is to use the reference of the movie Titanic. So a popular way to describe this would be to think of the scene of the Titanic when the crew members spotted the iceberg, and the Titanic was right on the path of the iceberg. And of course, the crew, they want to preserve the ship. They want to make sure that everyone is safe. And so they start to navigate the ship away from the iceberg. What they did not account for was the size of the iceberg below the surface of the water. So think of this in terms of your conscious and subconscious mind. The conscious mind, like I said, would represent the tip of that iceberg, the part of the iceberg that is showing, the part of the iceberg that we can see, that we recognize. However, the subconscious is everything below that. It's everything below the surface, what we can't see, and 9 times out of 10, it tends to be bigger than what's on top. It tends to be bigger than the tip of the iceberg. So going back to our reference of the Titanic, the crew members did not account for the size of the iceberg below the surface. And so because they forgot to take into account what was hidden, like I said before, what ended up happening was the thing that they were trying to avoid. So hopefully you guys get something out of this video. This is going to be for people who don't have any planets in their 12th house, as well as for people who do. So this first section of the video is going to be for people who don't have any planets in their 12th house at all. They just have an element ruling their 12th house, okay? So we're going to start out, of course, with Aries. If you have Aries ruling your 12th house, a blind spot for you dealing with this energy is that you may be unaware of your natural qualities as a leader. You may tend to just kind of go with the flow. Maybe that's because of your social conditioning, or because of maybe how you were brought up. Whatever the circumstances was that kind of separated you from that Aries 12th house energy, and you now disassociate yourself from it, you could have natural leadership qualities that you are unaware of. Another point of having Aries in the 12th house is that you could have a bit of a mean streak that you're unaware of. You could have some anger and aggression that you don't associate with yourself or that you disassociate from. However, other people can see it in you, or you tend to lash out and you just don't realize the intensity of your aggression or the intensity of your anger, but other people do. You could also be described by others as being self-centered or being pushy, being a little bossy. However, again, you do not associate yourself with these things. This is not something that you are aware of, but it is something that could possibly manifest outside of you. So just be on the lookout for that. And these are not all set in stone by any means, but just things for you to look at, things for you to take into consideration. Of course, always look at your aspects and what is happening to what in order to further determine these things. But like I said, we're just talking about the 12th house. So moving on to Taurus. If you have Taurus ruling your 12th house, you could be extremely trustworthy and unaware of it. So maybe overly trustworthy, almost to the point of being gullible. You could be extremely forthcoming to people and you take them at face value and everything that they say. You just kind of believe people when they tell you things, and maybe sometimes you get burned by it, or you later on down the line you find that this person was not worth trusting. So that could be a blind spot for you, is having a little too much trust in people. Another point of having Taurus in the 12th house is that you could be described as materialistic. You could be materialistic and overindulgent and not really realize it. Venus does rule the sign of Taurus. Venus is a planet that really loves to luxuriate, like take things in, have really nice things, and accumulate really nice looking things. And so people may see that about you, but you don't see it about yourself. Another trait of having Taurus in the 12th house is that you could be incredibly stubborn and very slow to move, very my way or the highway, very unyielding, and you disassociate yourself from that. If you have Gemini ruling your 12th house, so with Gemini ruling your 12th house, you could be really intelligent, but maybe you sell yourself short because you don't see yourself as being as intelligent as you are. People may describe you as being very modest or very humble about how much information that you have or how much you know. You wouldn't describe yourself as being highly intelligent, but other people see you that way. And so maybe you kind of sell yourself a little short. With Gemini ruling your 12th house as well, this could be a sign of being superficial. Maybe you have a lot of knowledge, but just on the surface level. Like you know a lot about a lot of different things, and you can talk about a lot of different things, but just on the surface. Like you don't really go deeper than that. Another point of having Gemini in your 12th house is that you could be a bit of an exaggerator. Some people may describe you as being a drama king or a drama queen. Mercury rules the sign of Gemini, and so with that being said, you may have a tendency that you're not aware of to really just like take things to the extreme when you're talking or when you're discussing things, or maybe you're very easily like triggered by certain words or certain things, and people don't understand that, and so they may describe you as being highly theatrical with your words. Moving on to Cancer in the 12th house. If you have Cancer ruling your 12th house of the subconscious and what is hidden, this is a little tricky because with Cancer ruling your 12th house, there could be a tendency here to forget the support and the nurturing and the healing that you need. You could kind of shut yourself off to that. You could be very giving and nurturing and supportive to others, but when it comes to taking that in for yourself and receiving those things for yourself, you disassociate from it. And so you give and give and give, and you shovel out all of this energy to other people, but you forget sometimes that you are also a human being and you need to be replenished and you need support and love and healing. And maybe if you have Cancer in the 12th house, you don't even know necessarily what those things are, or how that would look, what type of support, what type of healing that you need in order to make yourself feel whole and feel better. Another point of having Cancer in your 12th house is that you could be, there's a tendency here to be maybe passive aggressive toward others, or to be moody, to be very indirect. You could have like a shyness, or maybe you tend to kind of make yourself small in the presence of others. And so there's a bit of a reclusiveness to you. So moving on to Leo ruling your 12th house. So with Leo in the 12th house, you could be extremely charismatic and find that a lot of people are really drawn to you and just kind of flock to you and your energy, and you don't really know why. Like, you could be very popular, very well known to a lot of people. People may describe you as being very warm and very playful, all of these things, but maybe you don't see yourself as being as charismatic as you are. You don't see yourself being as warm and as playful and as fun as other people would describe you. However, with that being said, Leo in the 12th house could also be a sign of having a bit of an ego, being a little egotistical. This is also a strong placement for people that are vain and very kind of conceited and self-centered, but they don't realize it. So these are things to take into account with having Leo in the 12th house. Leo in the 12th house could also be an indicator of having control issues, being a show-off, having a hard time sharing the spotlight with other people. Okay, moving on to Virgo ruling the 12th house. If you have Virgo in your 12th house, you could be very organized and very orderly, and to you it just makes sense. It's the best way and the only way to live and to go about your day and your life. But to other people, it may seem like people may see your desire for organization as too much, or they may see it as compulsive. With Virgo in the 12th house, you could also be highly responsible. So this is a really good placement because, I mean, even though you disassociate from it and you don't see these things as being part of yourself, these are kind of good things, you know, being responsible, being organized and orderly. These would be described as being good traits. On the other side of that coin, though, with Virgo being in the 12th house, you could be obsessive, overly obsessive about things that you are unaware of. And you could be critical, very critical of yourself or very critical of other people. And there is a tendency with Virgo in the 12th house to always be striving for some sort of perfection. This could be a difficult element to have ruling your 12th house because you're striving for this perfection and you don't even realize it. You don't have any awareness that you are reaching for this unattainable thing. So if you have Virgo ruling your 12th house, be careful with that, be mindful of that. And again, the reason why we're here and we're watching this video is to make the subconscious conscious. Moving on to Libra. If you have Libra ruling your 12th house of what is hidden, you could be very charming and polished. So this is a little similar to the Leo energy that we just discussed. So very charming, people are very drawn to you. People come to you for advice because you're very diplomatic. You could have a large circle of people that trust you and people that consider you a really good friend, a really good mediator because you are so diplomatic. You could have a lot of people that admire your aesthetic and the way that you present yourself on a day-to-day basis. People may describe you as being very fashionable, very put together, and you do all of these things that I just described naturally without having any awareness of it. However, on the flip side of that, having Libra in the 12th house could also mean, of course, the popularized trait of Libra is that you could be indecisive, extremely indecisive and unaware of it. It could be extremely hard for you to make even the simplest decision about something, and you could tend to procrastinate and miss out on opportunities. Libra in the 12th house could also signal being a little superficial. You could be very polished and put together on the outside, like I said before, but people may not see a depth beneath that, or they may not perceive you to be any deeper than that, than what's on the outside, which just because you look nice on the outside, of course, it's not true that you're not a deep person, but that's how people may perceive you, as being someone who's very superficial or someone who only cares about how things look. Moving on to Scorpio in the 12th house. So if you have Scorpio ruling your 12th house, this is great because you could be extremely passionate and very emotional. You have a lot of emotional depth. Scorpio is also a sign that represents great sacrifice. However, on the flip side of that, you might have like a jealousy issue that you are unaware of, a very strong jealous streak. You could have a paranoia or a clinginess that makes you insufferable to other people, romantic partners and things of that nature. You could be a little destructive in both an emotional and in a physical sense. So the passion is great on the positive side. When you're vibrating at a high frequency, it can be very powerful and very transformative. But if you're vibrating at a lower frequency, this passion could very easily turn into rage, and it could turn into something chaotic and destructive. Again, not saying that all of this has to apply to every person that has Scorpio in the 12th house, but these are things to definitely be aware of. Moving on to Sagittarius. So if you have Sag ruling your 12th house, you could be very ambitious, very versatile, extremely optimistic, and to you, you're just going about your day. However, to other people, they may encounter you and feel very refreshed by your energy, feel very motivated and inspired by your energy. You may come into contact with other people and they may feel this renewed wave of ambition within themselves, which is super great. But on the downside of having Sagittarius in your 12th house, you could be or be described as very gluttonous. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, and Jupiter is a planet that wants to expand out. Sort of similar to Venus, it just kind of wants to accumulate and acquire a lot of things. You could also fall into bouts of laziness with Sagittarius in your 12th house. Moving on to Capricorn ruling the 12th house. So if you have Capricorn ruling your 12th house of the subconscious and what is hidden, you could find that you are extremely driven, determined, ambitious, responsible, all of these great things. You may just be going about your day-to-day life, your day-to-day routine, and then one day you look back and you've accomplished all of these really great things, and all of these accomplishments that you can say that you've achieved. But on the flip side of having Capricorn in your 12th house, you could also be rigid, very fearful of failure, very fearful of success. You could be described as pessimistic, and pessimistic meaning that it's very easy for you to kind of fall into a negative mindset, or to feel like you have failed. And having Capricorn in the 12th house could be a sign that you could be cynical. We're going to move on to Aquarius in the 12th house. So if you have Aquarius in your 12th house, on the positive side, you're very inventive, you're very free-spirited. Again, people may encounter you and feel very drawn to you. They may be very attracted to your sense of independence, how you just kind of follow your heart and you don't allow the restraints of society to hold you back. But on the more negative end of that, you could have an emotional detachment that you're unaware of. So you may have really big issues around going deeper into your emotions or connecting to people on a deeper emotional level. You could be described as irresponsible. Maybe you're so wrapped up in going your own way and doing your own thing and, you know, go with the wind and go wherever life takes you, that you have a hard time kind of anchoring down into something and being responsible to something. And so people may have a resentment or a anger or a disappointment toward you. Last but not least, looking at Pisces. If you have Pisces ruling your 12th house of the subconscious, this is an interesting one. So on the positive side of Pisces ruling your 12th house, you're extremely intuitive, very romantic, very compassionate, very sensitive. People may find a very nurturing and healing energy in your presence. On the flip side of Pisces, however, you could have a leaning toward being very unrealistic. You could have an escapist mentality. So this could be through the use of drugs or alcohol, could be through sex, it could be through shopping, anything that disconnects you emotionally from things. Having Pisces in your 12th house could also point to having a very codependent nature. You may find things that feel really good to you, whether it's a person or something else, and you just latch onto it. This could be an addiction to a feeling. It could be an addiction to a perception of something that you have. Now we're gonna move on to the planets. Okay guys, so looking at the planets in the 12th house. Now, of course, everyone has a sign ruling their 12th house. Some people don't have planets in their 12th house. However, some people have planets in their 12th house. So what you would do is you would take the previous information that I gave you based on whatever sign you have ruling your 12th house, and then you would take the information that I'm about to give you concerning the different planets in the 12th house, and you would put those together. So starting with the sun, of course. If you have sun in the 12th house, you could be very unaware of your identity, very unaware of who you are at your core. With sun in the 12th house, this could be a sign that you have a hard time seeing what separates you from other people, what makes you unique, what makes you different from other people. Moon in the 12th house, this means that you have a hard time connecting with your emotions. You have a hard time figuring out what your emotions are, how you're feeling. With moon in the 12th house as well, this could be a placement of someone who has a tendency to conceal their emotions. So they don't like to outwardly share how they're feeling. They don't express what they're feeling. They have a hard time opening up to other people about how they feel because they're a little more private or secretive about it. If you have Mercury in your 12th house, you could be very private and secretive about your inner thoughts, about how you're thinking about things, how you're processing things, what things mean to you. Venus in the 12th house, if you have Venus in the 12th house, this could indicate that you are unaware of what you need in a romantic partner. So you find difficulty in pinpointing what you're attracted to, or what makes you feel loved or makes you feel fulfilled romantically in a relationship. Venus also represents our self-value. So if you have Venus in the 12th house, it could mean that it's difficult for you to establish your self-worth and to know your value and what it is that you bring to the table. You could have Venus in the 12th house could lean more toward sort of like insecurity issues and things like that, and feeling very sort of small compared to everyone else in the world. So Mars, moving on to Mars in the 12th house, this could be a bit of a difficult aspect because Mars is a very aggressive planet. Having Mars in the 12th house could point to a mean streak or having anger that you are unaware of. Having Mars in the 12th house could also mean that you prefer to work behind the scenes. Mars is a planet of action and what drives us, how we like to initiate ourselves. So with Mars in the 12th house, you could be someone who doesn't, you don't really care for the spotlight. You thrive in a more kind of private setting. Moving on to Jupiter in the 12th house. So with Jupiter in your 12th house, you could tend to overextend yourself and burn out and not be aware of it. Like I said before, Jupiter wants to reach out and expand as far out as it can. So you may do a lot for others, you may do a lot in the sense of work, and you just do, and you burn out, or you just do too much without being replenished. And so you feel wiped out at the end of the day. With Jupiter being in the 12th house, this could be a really great placement because you could experience random bouts of luck that you can't explain. Like, good things just always happen to you and you don't know why. And this could be a very beneficial placement for people. So if you have Jupiter in your 12th house, comment down below and let me know your experiences with it. So moving on to Saturn. If you have Saturn in your 12th house of the subconscious or what is hidden, this could be a difficult placement as well because Saturn is the disciplinarian. Saturn is the one who comes in and gives us those hard lessons. It is the complete opposite of Jupiter. Jupiter wants to just have all of the things and grow, and like I said, very similar to Venus, it wants to just accumulate and, bring you luck. And Jupiter wants to make things easy for you and just give you good things all the time. Yes, honey, like, do what you will, like, c'est la vie, the world is your oyster. But Saturn is like, no, you need to sit down and learn this lesson, and it's gonna be hard. And it's necessary, and no, you can't go there yet. You can't. Saturn is like that parent that is very like restrictive, but it's for a good reason. So with Saturn in the 12th house, you may feel like you have really bad luck and you don't know why. All of these difficult things seem to kind of fall on you and fall into your life, and you just can't catch a break and you don't know why. And maybe you feel like the universe is punishing you and you just can't understand why these things are happening. If you have Saturn in your 12th house, comment down below and let me know your experiences with that. So Saturn in the 12th house could also point to insecurity and loneliness. 12th house also rules karma. So if you have Saturn in your 12th house, you could be experiencing these hard lessons and this unluckiness because of a past life tie. So yeah, if you have Saturn in your 12th house, comment down below and let me know how that is for you. If you have Uranus in your 12th house of what is hidden, this is an interesting placement because it could mean random, like you just have random insights of knowledge or intuition, epiphanies. This is a really good placement for geniuses. So Uranus in the 12th house is kind of rare. It can be very beneficial. However, I feel like a dark side of having Uranus in the 12th house is that you could have you could have random strokes of brilliance with Uranus in the 12th house, you could also experience kind of darker things from the subconscious that randomly resurface at inconvenient times. Moving on to Neptune, having Neptune in your 12th house. So Neptune is the natural ruler of the 12th house. If you have Neptune in your 12th house, you are extremely intuitive, you are extremely psychic. You can cut the video off right here because you're good, you're set, you're good to go. Thank you, have a good day. I'm just kidding. But very psychic, highly intuitive. This is a very strong placement for people that are in the spiritual arts. I feel like with Neptune in the 12th house, you could also have a hard time connecting to the subconscious with Neptune in your 12th house, because Neptune is a planet of illusion and kind of things not quite being as they seem. So your subconscious could trick you, or you just have a hard time establishing that strong connection to your subconscious. So again, another kind of two-sided pro and con thing. Last but not least, we have Pluto in the 12th house. If you have Pluto in the 12th house, this is the sign of someone who is extremely private. They do not like their personal private business out in the streets. They're very secretive. This is the placement of someone who might be unaware of their personal power. By tapping into their subconscious and unlocking their subconscious, they find a lot of power and strength there, because of 12th house being what rules the subconscious and Pluto being what rules transformation and death and rebirth. So with that being said, you guys, I hope you got something out of this video. Comment down below and let me know what you think, what your elements are ruling your 12th house, what your planets are that are in your 12th house, what your experiences are with those things. Let me know if anything in this video resonated with you. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and like and subscribe to my channel. There is more where this came from, and I will see you guys in my next video. Take care.